everyone, this is Logan and Cody of Star Wars Doctrine. Here having our first episode of our new mini podcast series. It's going to go over a few different topics. We'll be doing our hot take of the week, followed by our theoretical discussion that we have. And then we're going to make our way into a May the 4th discussion about some of the popular products they released. So should be a fun day, and hopefully we have some interesting things to talk about.
All right, so our hot take of the week. All right, you ready? Drum roll.
I'm not going to drum roll.
My hot take of the week goes back to when we went and saw The Phantom Menace in theaters, which was awesome, obviously.
Yeah, no, I mean, and always a great time.
Absolutely. Anytime you see Star Wars on the big screen. But we got a little surprised with it. You know, we got to see the Acolyte teaser, which was a lot longer than their normal trailer and some unseen footage. So my hot take going along with that is that after seeing that, I actually think the Acolyte is going to be a lot better than people are thinking or giving it credit for.
Okay.
So that's my hot take. I think the trailer obviously received a good amount of backlash online, it seems like, and I was kind of indifferent. I'm not one to typically write anything off, especially Star Wars, right? I'm always willing to give it a chance. But there's definitely a lot of people who seem like they weren't impressed with the trailer. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, it definitely seemed pretty divisive, especially for, I feel like, not having a lot of substance. You know, it was a pretty simple, basic trailer, like hype trailer. You know, there wasn't like a glaring, I don't think there was a glaring positive or negative, honestly, right off the bat from the trailer. So it was kind of shocking that it had a lot of negative input or feedback.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt. I didn't think there was enough there to make anyone hate it, but I didn't think, but like you said, it wasn't like it was mind blowing either. So definitely felt, hey, let's wait and see. But that clip, and obviously not everyone saw it. So kind of some of the things that stood out for me, we get this fight scene, right, between what looks like one of the main bad girls, and then one of the main Jedi, right? And so the choreography on it, I thought was incredible, and the fighting style, they did a lot of. It was like really fast paced and a lot of interesting shots with the fighting that I don't think we've ever really seen in Star Wars before. Like I almost don't even know how to describe it.
Okay.
But it looked really cool. It gave me like the Matrix style kind of vibes, and
definitely,
yeah, and just that sneak peek, it really kind of had me going, okay, like this could be going somewhere. This could actually be pretty cool. So, I mean, I don't know how hot that take is, but I feel like with the way people have reacted, it might be a hot take.
Fair. Well,
I don't know.
I think that's a good point. I feel like there's some negative feedback going around about it, and I don't really know why. Just because, like I said, I felt like a very middle of the road trailer. Yeah, it seemed cool. Yeah, but I didn't see anything that I was like so excited for or anything. I was like, that looked terrible. But getting that little sneak peek, like you said, it felt very. The fight scene was very good. It was a different take, and it's a different timeline in Star Wars, so it's still. So I'm totally good with little difference. And it wasn't, a lightsaber combat. Important to note, it was more of hand-to-hand combat, small weapons combat. Right. And as you pointed out with the Matrix, it felt a lot like when Neo is really explaining stuff, when Morpheus is really explaining stuff to Neo in the Matrix, and they have kind of that quintessential iconic fight scene where they're going through and showing him how to fight, and that cool kung fu scene. It felt very similar to that scene in this short form hand-to-hand combat, which is exciting. It's cool to have callbacks to other projects that aren't Star Wars, if that's their intention. And at the other point, I mean, I think a lot of the nitpicks with the sequel fightings was how kind of slow it felt. Some people liked that it felt more like a traditional sword fight. Some people who maybe grew up with the prequels were not happy about the loss of the acrobatic fighting styles. And this kind of felt like maybe kind of a good middle ground where it felt realistic, but still amped up to where, you're dealing with people who wield the Force.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up. yeah, and I think it's cool to see fighting in Star Wars
Mhm.
that isn't always lightsaber to lightsaber, um, especially amongst Jedi's. Like we see it, obviously gunfight, things like that, but to see Jedi's kind of using
Right.
martial arts almost, right? And she also used the Force in a lot of cool ways throughout it.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I think that after seeing that, I think people might be pleasantly surprised with. I mean, I hope we're all pleasantly surprised.
Oh, that's not the
I
best
always
part, right?
want, right? I always want, yeah, exactly. I always want Star Wars to be good, right? I'm not gonna
Mhm.
root for it to fail because life's more fun when Star Wars is good.
Maybe
So
that's your hot take. I'm just rooting for Star Wars to have good things. I don't,
yeah,
I'm rooting for
always
positivity in the community. Not so much that I care what people think. I like when I like Star Wars. That's my favorite part is when I'm like, dude, that was really good, and everyone's excited about it. I like that feeling. Good Star Wars
absolutely,
is the best.
absolutely.
All right, so we're gonna move on to our kind of question of the week. And this one goes back to a discussion that Cody and I have had pretty regularly, I'd say. Um, and I don't feel like it's an uncommon thing. And in Star Wars, when you're looking at the different books, movies, everything that takes place across it, you have your timeline, right? And some people are familiar with it, some people aren't as familiar. The movies are pretty evenly spaced out on the Star Wars timeline with pretty concrete numbers. A lot of the visual guides have how many years before the Battle of Yavin or Episode 4 something takes place, and how many years after the Battle of Yavin it takes place. Um, so there are some good numbers in Star Wars, some concrete timelines, and then there are some timelines, for example, like the actual duration of a film. We don't really have a great idea on how long each of those take place. So the question is to Cody, looking at Star Wars, whether it's a concrete number that we have currently in the timeline or something that we don't have nailed down, what's something that you would like to assess a timeline to, whether it's a change or like actually saying, hey, this is how long I think I would like it to take. Now, my point would
Yeah,
be that you can't make a whole new scene. Like we could have maybe a sentence that someone goes, this is how long it takes, or something that makes it obvious if it isn't obvious in the film. But we're not like adding or subtracting sequences from Star Wars. We're not rewriting anything. We're just
sure.
adjusting the timeline.
How long something takes.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, in our discussions, like we've obviously, I think we've nailed quite a few, and there's a few that I would be interested in changing or nailing down. But I think the one that always stands out to me the most is the Clone Wars in
Okay.
general. I guess it's not a specific movie, but
Right.
just the Clone Wars. It's such an epic event, and it really kind of sets the tone for everything, right, that comes next, which is Revenge of the Sith and all of the originals. So the fact that the Clone Wars is only 3 years long always
Right.
just does has not really ever made sense in my head, right?
Okay.
Like, when we see the Battle of Geonosis to, Revenge of the Sith, so much happens in between there that I'm like, and Anakin grows so much. That's the other
Right.
big thing, he grows so much, Ahsoka, everything. It's like, so he was only training Ahsoka for 3 years, like,
Right. Max. And that includes
and
Ahsoka leaving
yeah,
the order, him become him before
right,
Ahsoka. It's a lot of things to cover in three
right.
years.
And you don't get the vibe based on their relationship that they've only been master and apprentice for 3 years, And so obviously it's because that was all added in later, and Lucas wanted to put the cartoon between 2 and 3, and he'd already decided that was 3 years, whatever. But I think if the Clone Wars were more like 6 years or
Okay.
something, uh, I think you need at least 5 to 6 years to really
Okay.
feel like. I mean, it's a galaxy wide, right?
It's a
Battle.
galaxy-wide
That's
conflict, right? Yeah, this isn't like just two neighboring planets or a planet fighting itself, even. And I mean, it's Star Wars a little different than world our Earth-based politics, but we haven't really
yeah,
had a lot of wars that lasted 3 years. All of
Right.
our world wars lasted a pretty decent amount of time. The United States, the Civil War lasted about 5 years, or a little
It's
over
hard to
four type of
resolve
deal.
it's hard to resolve conflict and like that at that scale in 3 years. And obviously,
Right.
Palpatine had his plan and he was behind the whole thing, so maybe he was able to wrap it up a little quicker because of that. But I don't know. That's just my thought. I think it should be a little longer. I think that would add a little more weight to everything as well if it did take longer. And you know, I don't know. That's what I think.
No,
What about you?
I think that's a good point, and especially run into with even the Clone Wars TV series, right? It's 7 seasons long, and 90% of it is not chronological because they kind of ran into that issue where initially they were going to make season one be year one, season two be year two, season three be the third and final year of the conflict. But it was doing so well, it captured the hearts of so many. The character growth in it was fantastic that all of a sudden we start adding in filler episodes. So watching it chronologically is now incredibly difficult.
Yeah,
Uh, so that's always
need a
exciting. So
guide.
you can tell that it doesn't fit, and I think that's a good point. I mean, with the con, and I think something that maybe is important or maybe not, is with Anakin. We start with Anakin, he's so young, right? In episode one, he's 9. Episode 2 takes place 10 years later. He's 1920, or 910 in the first one, 1920 in the second. And then we're led to believe it takes 3 years. So he's really young. He's really young to be doing anything he's accomplished, which is impressive. And that's definitely one of the ideas. But also at the same point, he's not too old to be a dad, right? He's not getting in the, oh, he's so old type of deal to be fighting a war. Oh, he needs to have his kids, so he's like young. So like the information that we have that's lined up for him, the important things we know that needs to happen in episode 3, I feel like you could easily make him, instead of being the conflict coming to an end when he's in his early 20s and him becoming a dad in his early 20s, you could easily push that to his 30s, right? And that all
Yeah,
still fits. I mean, it's not
absolutely.
like, oh, he needs to have a kid at 24 because he needs to be 40 something, and it doesn't really work as well. And I think also with Obi-Wan, it helps kind of age him if you can do
True.
things like that, right? I mean, there's a few
Right.
things where you get the vibe that these people are older, and then you're
Yeah.
like, and then by making this a short time frame, you kind of maybe make that seem maybe less impactful itself too.
Yeah, that's a good point. It could have a good domino effect on how other things shape out too. Yeah, I just think it makes sense.
Yeah, that's a solid point. It's one that I'm sure we'll talk about a lot. I mean, we always have talked about things like that. For myself, and the reason I kind of thought of this question or triggered to be a discussion for this week was sitting through the Phantom Menace. Again, that we're approached with another conflict, right? With the invasion of Naboo, first the blockade, followed by the invasion, and all of that. And they flee Naboo, land on Tatooine. They receive a transmission that, hey, people are dying, you need to come back. Like, and it's obviously a trap, things like that. But it definitely feels like the Phantom Menace takes place over a long period of time. I'm not sure exactly what I feel like it takes place over, but I think if you say it takes place over a week, that seems crazy, right?
Yeah.
Because the entire point of it is, hey, they're invading Naboo. They're looking for the queen who runs away. They're looking for these Jedi. They're putting these people into camps. People are apparently dying, being tortured, presumably. There's bad things going on, and not that suffering can't take place in as little as a day or anything like that, because obviously it can. Terrible atrocities can be attributed or can happen in 10 minutes, right? We don't need a long period of time for bad things to happen. But I feel like kind of the sorrow and the pressure that Queen Amidala is being forced on that makes her make the radical decision to say, hey, I want to impeach the chancellor. Hey, we have no faith in the system. I feel like it undercuts it if we're saying that the Phantom Menace takes place in a short amount of time.
Yeah. No, yeah, good point. You would think that for her to want to make a drastic move like that, this is something that has been going on for a little bit. Well, and not to mention, I mean, they do travel quite a bit in the Phantom Menace, right? Like they go
Right.
from Naboo to Coruscant, and then she needs to go back to Naboo. So I mean, that I can't imagine would be
Right. I
a
mean,
short.
Naboo to an outer rim planet
Well,
is
yeah,
out
that
of the
too.
reaches,
Yeah,
right? I mean, Tatooine is notoriously far away from the center of the Republic. That's an important point why the Republic has
Yes.
no control over it. Then all the way to the Republic, then all the way back to Naboo. I mean,
Yeah.
and I
Good
mean,
point.
from her trip from Coruscant to Naboo, Chancellor Palpatine becomes elected. Senator Palpatine becomes Chancellor Palpatine. So, assuming on how slow everything was politically, we can't imagine they're like, oh, we're impeaching Chancellor Valorum and electing Palpatine in a day. That seems crazy.
It does seem, yeah, it seems quick. Well, I mean, and they're on Tatooine for a few days too on their way there, right? Like at least you get the feel that wasn't,
Right. I
I
definitely
mean, at
feel
least a
like the
couple
movie
days.
makes it seem shorter than I would like it to be. I would like them to be more of marooned. And that's where I would throw in a line, if possible, is make it seem like they're more trapped and desperate on Tatooine than like, we just ran
Sure.
away. We found this and it's going to take 2 days to leave. Because that doesn't seem desperate, right? And the entirety of the
Yeah.
Phantom Menace is kind of the desperation of everything, right?
Right.
I
Like you're
mean,
willing to,
there's
yeah,
that's why they're turning to a kid, right? That's
exactly.
right. I mean, Qui-Gon is definitely motivated by whatever the Force guides him to do, and he's very great at that. But I still feel like if you're just like, I've been here for 4 hours, but I'm willing to risk everything on this kid I just met because I feel like it. I like that.
Yeah.
That seems crazy to me, and I think a,
Right.
a notion that they're trapped on Tatooine and that it contributes to everything else and makes the belief in Anakin a little more believable. It makes the desire for Padme to be like, hey, let's oust this government because my people need help. And it makes her seem less impulsive, which definitely feels like she's a little impulsive. I mean, she chooses to marry Anakin. That's pretty much as impulsive as you can get. But she's definitely a level-headed person, and most of the time, she's a smart political leader. She's not just going to make these changes for no reason, despite her
Yeah.
young age.
I like it. Yeah.
Thank you. That's good.
Makes sense. Okay. Well, sweet. What's our next segment?
Our
Help
next
me out
statement.
here.
We are moving into the May the 4th drops. Anything that kind of came out over this past week, and you always get some cool items, whether it's announcements from Star Wars, gifts, prizes. There was a few things released at Galaxy's Edge. So, do any shopping or see anything that looked like you wanted to spend a lot of money on?
Well, I wanted to spend a lot of money. I didn't spend a lot of money,
Oh,
but
that's sad.
obviously, we both got a pretty sweet pair of shoes
Right.
um, from Bulls Air, which you could probably saw, if you're watching, probably saw that on our page quite a bit. But so some pretty sweet Star Wars shoes. So that's going to
Yeah.
be fun. Um, I think the kind of new merch that caught my eye the most was that new hollow chess uh, table that they're doing.
Oh,
Um,
chess. All right.
yeah, I I wanted to buy it, and I will. I will have it someday. The time is just not right because it has a pretty nice $100 price tag on it. But
Okay.
in time, I will own it. It looks
Birthday coming up.
phenomenal.
Birthday coming up.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Um, but yeah, no, it looked incredible. Um, that's like been a dream of mine, right? It's like I was a kid. I mean, like what else? Like you Star Wars games, it's like I think of that and I think of Sabak, right? And those are like the two that you're like, I wish that existed in the real world. And
Right.
so this,
Right.
yeah, this board looked pretty sweet. It's like electronic and
No, I
it
mean,
looks cool.
I
I know
think it's
they,
a great product for sure. And I mean, even like you think about Star Wars, just watching things, there's not a lot of things to be like invested in wanting that's like playable, right? There's, as
right,
far as
right, yeah,
games go, like, I mean,
especially in
Sabak
universe.
makes its only appearance on film, important to note, and a film in Solo, right?
Yeah.
And it's not super well explained or anything like that. Don't get me wrong, Hollow Chess is not explained at all either. No one understands any of those rules. Don't lie to me.
The
Uh,
only rule is to let the Wookiee win.
which is important. Important to let the Wookiee win.
I
Something
think
about
it's
getting
probably in the rule book.
that, probably. But I mean, it looks so cool. I mean, it comes out in what 1977 holographic chess. It looks great. It's something that all of us
Yeah.
have seen and definitely wanted for a long time. Uh, and for me, one of the things with going to Galaxy's Edge and being able to go hop in the Millennium Falcon on the ride that they have that takes place in the Millennium Falcon, the best part of the ride is by far waiting inside the Millennium Falcon. and you can
Oh
go and
yeah.
sit down and grab that picture and sit at that hollow chess table. And honestly, I don't even care about writing the red. People can skip me if they just let me sit at that table longer. Like it's so cool to feel
Sit there all day.
sitting there. Yeah, seriously, it's like I don't want to do anything else. You guys go ride reds. I'm just gonna sit here. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know if it quite comes with a whole couch that you get to sit on that looks like the Millennium
Oh my
Falcon, but
gosh.
having the having the table
That'd be amazing.
will be great for sure, and maybe learning a few rules.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious how it's played, like by the by their rule book. What about you? Any did you grab anything or see anything that caught your eye
No, I
other than
think I
that?
was I was dialed in on the hollow chess myself as well. I mean, that was basically what all you and I talked about that day, and
Hmm.
it's hard not to be excited. I hope it's not just regular chess. That'd be kind of disappointing. I already own Star Wars chess pieces, so I don't need that. Um, the other thing that actually you sent me was Galaxy's Edge did release a special edition of Darth Maul's lightsaber for the
Oh yeah.
Phantom Menace.
Oh
Cool
yeah.
box that plays music. Everything
Hmm.
about it looked way over the top. I mean, but I've always wanted to have Darth Maul's lightsabers, and that's surprisingly not been one I've ever purchased, like in the nicer aluminum sets myself. So seeing the cool collector's box definitely got me a little more excited, and something that I was like, all right, maybe I'm going to Galaxy's Edge in the next week or two, or have to go check it out and see how cool it is.
Yeah, that thing looks phenomenal. Playing the Duel of the Fates when you open the box. Golly, dude.
Yeah,
And they
can't be
say
much
money
better.
can't buy happiness.
It can buy a lot of Star Wars
Oh,
things, which is like super close to happiness.
pretty much the same thing.
I don't see
Pretty
a
much.
difference now.
No.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in this week. If you want to get involved in any of our discussions, we'll be posting clips of this podcast as well as actual discussion posts where you can weigh in on our social media. So go feel free to check us out there, and hopefully we get involved on these discussions and hear what you all think.